We're going to have a look through this morning's papers. With us this morning, the writer and broadcaster Vicky Beeching. You're going to have a look through some of the inside pages for us in just a moment. Should we have a look at the front pages first? Front page of the Daily Mail. They have a story about recycling. Millions of tonnes of household rubbish, they say, painstakingly sorted by families, is being dumped abroad, naming countries like China, India and Indonesia, where much of this stuff ends up.
Independent, they're talking about Britain running out of wheat as the cold weather that we've been experiencing, well, it's caused a crisis that's hit the farmers, and it says that Britain will be forced to become an importer of wheat for the first time in a decade this year, a net importer that is, after the bad weather has devastated crops.
Front page of the Times reporting on those latest threats from North Korea involving the embassies there, and front page of the Guardian still talking about this is the George Osborne's linking of some of the problems with the benefit system with the case of Mick Philpott, and we'll have more on that a little later this morning as well. Where are you going to start us?
Start today with a very sad and powerful story. There's a 26-year-old filmmaker called Lee Haplin who set out to make a documentary to explore what it's really like to be sleeping rough in Newcastle. And tragically, after 3 days of filming, he actually died of hypothermia. So this is a pretty powerful example of what it's actually like to be immersed in the sleeping rough culture. And I think it really raises awareness of what people out there this winter have gone through.
Do we know much about the sequence of events? Presumably more is emerging, and will
more is emerging. It's quite mysterious. He was basically sleeping in a kind of rundown hostel. He did tweet that he was very, very cold. He tweeted asking if anybody had a sleeping bag, and he was basically so committed to the cause that he wasn't going to cut any corners. He literally wanted to live as those sleeping rough would, and it's cost him his life.
But he wouldn't be the first journalist or person to, if you like, try and emulate the conditions that people live in. It's something we see sometimes, don't we? And I mean, Ian Duncan Smith, there was that line this week about him saying, you know,
exactly.
I could live on that at £56 a week.
Exactly.
In this case, it's
and it's another thing, isn't it, to actually walk in somebody's shoes, and
really
he actually did cite some of the benefit cuts as an inspiration for why he was making the documentary. Very, very sad.
A story from The Independent.
Yes, a young lady who we've really come to know her face and also her name, haven't we? Malala. She was the Pakistani girl who was shot by the Taliban for wanting an education, speaking out about the rights of girls to be educated. Here she is in The Independent again today, and it's her charity. She's made a donation, hasn't she? And that's the story in the paper today. And she's backed by Angelina Jolie.
She is. It's an amazing video. If you get the chance to watch it, her face just lights up, and she says it's literally the happiest day of her whole life. She's funding the education of 40 girls back in Pakistan. And Angelina Jolie's been so impressed, she's actually supporting her with $200,000. So this is really going to change the lives of these 40 girls. And obviously Malala, wanting to be a world changer, is saying let's change 40 and then envisage changing an entire nation. So very inspiring.
And indeed, of course, I mean, we heard a little bit of that yesterday on the programme, in fact, from Angelina Jolie, who made that statement about her. But of course, her own life, Malala's life, has changed so much as well, hasn't it? Because she's now at school in Birmingham. Her own story, her personal story, is remarkable.
It is remarkable, and I can't wait to read the book. Apparently that's coming out very soon. I Am Malala is the title, so it's a pretty powerful, hefty story already.
One that the British public very much embraced, wasn't it? It was something that there was something about the sequence of events and her age and how she stood up.
Absolutely.
So
and I
in
think
a situation when others wouldn't dream of it, there's something really that struck a chord with
something
people.
When you're that young and you act that bravely, I think it strikes in all of us a sense of wanting to rise to the occasion. And if she can do it, then so can we. And I think she's going to inspire literally an entire generation of young girls.
Well, you've chosen a story in The Guardian as well today about Uganda. It plans to introduce a ban on miniskirts, we read from this article. So no skirts above the knee, and people could be arrested as a result.
I mean, it seems a little bit like an amusing story on the surface, but I think having read about, you know, Malala and the changes she's making, then you get kind of dig a bit deeper into this story about Uganda, and they're actually saying that women are basically being blamed for sexual violence. And there's a Catholic priest in there who's cited as saying that these kind of erotic outfits are actually to blame for women being attacked. And I have a real passion for gender equality, and I think that story at its heart is actually gender discrimination. So they're saying that if you're wearing a skirt above the knee, you could actually be arrested, when really the problem is in raising the young men of the culture to honour and respect women. So I think they're definitely pointing at the wrong target, and I think it's very sad indeed.
Yeah, and those are the issues you raise there are ones which a lot of people say still remain even here, even now, do they not? About, you know, about whether people think that women are responsible, you know, whether that sometimes that still raises its head even now in our culture.
It does, it absolutely does. Even around the Grand National and some of the outfits that are being worn and the amount of skin being shown, it's, people kind of taking a pop at women saying you bring these things on yourself. But I think women have to be free to express themselves and dress in a way that feels good to them, and men have to learn how to respect that.
You've picked a story from the Express for us as well.
A young woman who was a heroine, inspirational, Anne Frank.
Yes, I loved reading the Diary of Anne Frank when I was a teenager. It really impacted me about you know, her life, her story. And this is actually one of her childhood friends. They grew up across the street from each other, and her childhood friend survived Auschwitz and is finally going to be telling her story in a book called After Auschwitz. And apparently she was pushed to tell the story by the lack of information that she found, especially among Americans. She said when she spoke to them about Auschwitz, about concentration camps in general, there was such a lack of knowledge. And they even asked her what they did on Sundays and whether they could bring pets. So she said that just the vast lack of understanding of what happened has pushed her to come to the fore and actually tell her story.
And sort of inspiring women come in all different shapes and sizes and places and whatever. But there's a kind of a link there somewhere, isn't there?
There is. This final story really made me chuckle. So the Duchess of Cambridge was in Scotland and met a young schoolgirl who presented her with the Kate doll. And it must be a weird experience. I'm sure you guys would struggle if somebody presented you with, you know, a Barbie or a Ken doll that looked like you.
Yeah, or didn't. I mean, that's the worst thing, isn't it? Or...
Exactly. And Kate was fairly horrified, and especially commented on her hair, which I think the piece says looks more like Cheryl Cole in a L'Oreal advert. But I actually thought the hair was quite impressive. I think that much volume is quite a compliment.
Well, as soon as I saw that, I was thinking there are probably much worse dolls done of real people.
Totally. And
probably,
I think, it's probably less about what it looks like, and I think probably to her it's maybe a reality check about how much culture does kind of plastify celebrities and maybe what's in store for her, so maybe a bit of a shock.
Vicky, you'll be back in an hour's time for the moment. Thank you.